It was a war of words at the World Economic Forum this year. Niceties and politeness were set aside to put a line in the sand about the new geoeconomic realities of the day, with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney not mincing his words.
Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Over the past 2 decades, a series of crises in finance, health, energy, and geopolitics have laid bare the risks of extreme global integration. But more recently, great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. You cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit through integration when integration becomes the source of your subordination.
President Emmanuel Macron took to the podium, berating the current international order as it's become, highly critical of what he describes as instability and imbalances from a security and defense point of view, as well as an economic perspective.
It's as well a shift towards a world without rules, where international law is trampled underfoot, and where the only law that seems to matter is that of the strongest, and imperial ambitions are resurfacing. Obviously, the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine, which will enter into its 4th year next month, and conflicts continue in the Middle East and across Africa. This is as well a shift toward a world without effective collective governance, and where multilateralism is weakened by powers that obstruct it or turn away from it, and rules are undermined.
While it was clear that the critiques coming from the previously quoted leaders referred much to US President Donald Trump's foreign and economic policies without necessarily naming him, Trump himself directly called out those very leaders when it was his time to speak, referring to Mark Carney as ungrateful and cheekily questioning why it was that President Macron was wearing sunglasses inside the venue. But joking aside, Trump raved about the anticipated growth of the US economy and how foreign direct investment was expected to exceed $18 trillion. He also encouraged other nations to follow his policy path, speaking scathingly about what Europe had become, saying it had gone in the wrong direction.
In recent decades, it became conventional wisdom in Washington and European capitals that the only way to grow a modern Western economy was through ever-increasing government spending, unchecked mass migration, and endless foreign imports. The consensus was that so-called dirty jobs and heavy industry should be sent elsewhere, that affordable energy should be replaced by the Green New Scam, and that countries could be propped up by importing new and entirely different populations from faraway lands. This was the path that sleepy Joe Biden administration and many other Western governments very foolishly followed, turning their backs on everything that makes nations rich and powerful and strong.
The South African delegation, led by National Treasury and International Relations, among other ministries, avoided controversial debates and rather focused on the core of talking to players at the WEF with the possibility of partnerships for economic improvement in the country. Ministers were asked to reflect on the G20 presidency and its key wins. Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana was positive about the launch of the G20 Finance Track Africa Engagement Framework, which seeks to unlock Africa's regional potential, and also highlighted other achievements.
The major achievement has been the endorsement of the G20 Ministerial Declaration on Debt Sustainability, which commits to supporting efforts by low and middle-income countries to address debt vulnerabilities, many of which are on the African continent. This declaration is significant because it outlines key actions and commitment to support sustainable debt levels for low and middle-income countries.
Quite aptly, International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola talked about how South Africa used its G20 presidency platform to boost cooperation among nations. A tough ask in a world where some are choosing to look inward and go their own way.
South Africa's presidency of the G20 was marked by its bridge-building role, successfully navigating geopolitical tensions amongst members to secure consensus on key priorities and deliverables, guided by the spirit of inclusivity and cooperation. South Africa ensured that the G20 remained focused on solutions rather than divisions. At the same time, South Africa adopted a pragmatic approach to its presidency, balancing an ambitious developmental agenda.
National Treasury issued a statement at the close of WEF saying that Team South Africa had engaged in successful meetings with global investors, potential investors and business partners. At the same time, it was announced that South Africa would host the Spring Davos World Economic Forum in April next year, a gathering that will have immediate benefits for the tourism and hospitality sectors. Nampumelo Siziba, SABC News, Johannesburg.